Not bad. Hello, I'm Lynn Wintersteller, and welcome to the Huron Playhouse, or at least what will become the Huron Playhouse. For 8 exhausting, wonderful weeks beginning each June, this quiet school auditorium transforms into Ohio's oldest summer theater company. As an actress, I've had the opportunity to...
Excuse me. Lynn? Lynn?
Hello, yes.
Lynn, careful there. You almost stepped out of your light.
I did? Oh, geez. Wouldn't want to do that. Let's see, where was I? Oh, yes. As an actress, I've had the opportunity to play both on and off Broadway.
Lynn, excuse me, I'm sorry to cut in again, but I'm having difficulty understanding you. Perhaps if you work on your enunciation a bit?
My enunciation? Look, who is this? Who are you and where are you?
You won't find me out there in the house. I'm in L.A.
L.A.? What in the world?
Hi, Lynn, it's me, Ron Liebman. Just having a little fun with you, dear. All in fun, all in jest. Bit of ribbing, you know, darling.
Ron Liebman.
Yeah, you don't believe me? Cue the photo, guys.
Excuse me, Ron?
Oh, sorry, I was... excuse me.
Where did you say you were?
In Los Angeles. I'm working on this production out here on the West Coast, as we say, and I couldn't get away. I wanted to, but I couldn't. But I wanted to be a part of this salute to the Huron Playhouse. So with a bit of the old Hollywood magic, I'm there with you.
I've heard of throwing your voice, but this is ridiculous.
Not bad, Lynn, but let's get serious, shall we? Let's talk about me.
Excuse me?
Now, I've had a fulfilling career, both on and off Broadway, in movies and on television, but one of the most defining decisions of my life was made right where you're standing, Lynn, on the Huron Playhouse stage. Actually, it's true. That's where I made up my mind that I would become an actor.
Here? Really?
Yeah, I was in my first summer at the Huron Playhouse, and I was cast as Papa Barrett in The Barretts of Wimpole Street, 18 years old, with mutton chops, okay? So anyway, I had my first entrance, and he was to cross the stage from right to left, and they all were very quiet. I was to stand by the mantelpiece and utter my first line, which was, "I am most displeased." On opening night, just before I said that line, I walked to the mantelpiece and saw a statue of a small child. And I turned that statue of the small child toward the wall, as if I were punishing one of my own children. I don't know what came over me at that moment. I don't know why I did that, but I did it. And then I said, "I am most displeased." I can't really explain what that moment meant to me, but it was the moment when I realized that acting could be creative and not just a reproductive art. I didn't know that till after, but it was a very important moment for me in my life, indeed in my career, and I made it right there where you're sitting, on the stage of the Huron Playhouse.
I never knew that. But then, you were here long before I was.
Oh, careful now, Lynn.
You realize, of course, that at that stage in your career in the professional theater, you would not have had the chance to do that. Make a role your own, that is, because you probably would have had a little more than a walk-on, but certainly not the lead. Now that's the beauty of the Huron Playhouse. It affords young actors the opportunity to do meaty roles.
And don't forget about all the talent behind the stage, the set, costume designers, sound, lighting technicians. It provides greater responsibility.
Yes. Many of our fellow Playhouse alumni, like ourselves, have gone on to New York, Hollywood, regional theater. Others work in schools and colleges across the nation, and a sizable number have even chosen non-theatrical professions. But whatever the career, the experience they gained here was invaluable, and the memory very,
Memorable?
You bet. Altogether, more than 1,400 company members have crossed these boards at the Huron Playhouse through its 50 summers.
50 summers. Now there's something to celebrate.
And that's just what we intend to do, starting with a look at how it all started.
The idea of a playhouse came up one Friday night in the living room of my home. I had come home from the theater rehearsal, bringing 3 students with me. And then I began outlining to them everything that I had learned over the past several years about what is required to have a summer theater. The 2 boys decided they would go out with me the next morning on Saturday, and we would go looking for a possible site for the theater. But the moment we drove in here, I was impressed because the town reminded me of those small villages in New England, in the coastal resort of New England. I went to the post office, and there the postmistress recommended that I go to see Mr. McCormick, Mr. R.L. McCormick, the superintendent of schools. He was so receptive to the idea that when I suggested, could we use your auditorium, he took it up just like that. And the final arrangement was that I would go back for a week and talk with the president at the university, and he would go and make the arrangements with the school board.
And he came back and he told me about the Huron Playhouse, the setup with the theater, and particularly the openness of the people to have a summer theater here. And the next step, of course, was to go to Dr. Prout, the president of the university, to get his approval and his backing. And he had been superintendent of schools in Sandusky, so he was all for it. And I said, Fred, go ahead, let's get it set up. So he went ahead and that first season had some of the best actors and so on that he could get.
Fred Walsh, our first director, was really hard on women actors, I guess all actors, because he required the very best. Sometimes we were in tears, but we loved him dearly. And one of his geniuses was his technical directing. He, especially comic technique. He could make a line funny that wasn't funny.
I came up to Bowling Green, and then I heard about the summer theater and an opportunity to get some additional credit in theater, and I had always enjoyed theater. So I thought, well, it'd be a wonderful summer, and it turned out to be.
Well, it was, because you were playing with me.
That's true. I forgot about that.
That really makes your whole summer.
We had an absolute ball that year. Fred had a wonderful concept, and there were some veterans that had the GI Bill, which gave us $65 a month and a little bit of a base to get this thing off the ground, as it were.
In the summer stock, you know, you're kind of half on your own. You weren't really students. I think that was probably the best benefit. You had to depend on each other.
In 1949, we never thought of it lasting 50 years. We thought that it would last 3 or 4. The first production we did, which was John Loves Mary, that we were performing on the 4th of July, which was a beastly hot day. We had about 15 people in the audience. And we were playing it as broad comedy. Nobody laughs when there are only 15 people in the audience.
But I went backstage to feed the young people their last salt pill before the curtain was to go up. And I told them to not be discouraged, but rather to be complimented that these people had come to see them on such a hot night in a non-air-conditioned auditorium. We were trying to air-condition it. We had 2 cans filled with ice and fans blowing over them.
I think frankly, one of the big things that pushed it ahead and helped it to get a sound footing was I had my secretary write a letter to every service club along the coast of Lake Erie. And we announced that we were available to put on a program for them. And we took people who were in the show, we took people who could sing, who could dance. We would go out 3 or 4 times a week and do a show at noon for a service club all the way from Toledo to Elyria. And we had people coming in groups. The service clubs themselves came as groups of people to see the shows.
Hard work almost every day, but it was good work, and it was work that was fulfilling. If you weren't hammering or sawing or painting, you were learning lines, you were reading lines, you were trying to figure out how to deal with a character, how to deal with just everything.
All of these McCormick Middle School rooms transform into specialized theater spaces that make it a working playhouse. The initial setup takes 5 12-hour days with about 30 people to accomplish. From before 8 o'clock in the morning until around 11 each night, this building is home to the company members. Meals are prepared here, and the Playhouse maintains its own commissary. The Playhouse has always been under the sponsorship of Bowling Green State University, and everything is moved in from Bowling Green to convert this school building into a functional theater. One longtime resident of Huron used to call her daughter in New York City to announce, "Summer's here. The Playhouse trucks have arrived."
Really, we bring a total of about 20 tons of stuff into this building and get it all set up. And then at the end of the last show, we turn around and take it all out in the matter of a few hours. Be real careful when you're putting it on. Yeah. All 4 pipes have to go in at the same time.
We need something to do. 3 people? Maybe 4? What? Oh. Ronnie, do you remember where these go?
Yeah, out in the house somewhere.
You're a big help.
You told me, I told you.
Oh, somewhere.
Yeah. On the stage left wall. Not the upstage wall. Not the downstage. The stage left. Hey, you gotta walk it up.
Everything has its place. Makeup, costumes, scenery units, door frames, lighting equipment, all have to be unloaded before setting up the company's living quarters.
Just another 2 tons to go.
Jess Turner, Julie Newland, Jen Haskell, Emily is going to be the house mom, and
One of the
Montfort.
unique things about
Everyone
the
else
Playhouse is that it has always provided housing for the company. Now it's in Shawnee School, but for over 30 years it was in cottages on the lake within 3 blocks from the Playhouse. Breakfasts were served in the cottages.
That's awesome. So are we the old fogey room? Is that it?
Yeah.
Or the
This is
sedate room?
like Shady Hills or something. Well, now we've got all the staff moving in. And so we're going to set up, and we're just giving ourselves a place to sleep tonight. On Sunday, all the actors will move in. By that time, we'll have all this set up to where we'll have the partitions in place, we'll have all the beds in place.
It's been a very long day. I've had no major accidents. I set Brian up with the same plan.
I thought it would be a great place. I've only heard good things about it, and I thought it'd be a great experience for me.
What I hope to get out of the Playhouse this summer is just a whole new, different type of theater.
Well, if you wanted to know a typical day at the Playhouse, basically you can have a number of different jobs, and we have 3 rotations during the day, morning, afternoon, and evening. And in the morning, you're assigned to a workstation, and that could be rehearsal, that could be the scene shop, that could be props, it could be costumes, or it could be the office. And during that time, you're helping out whatever they need help with, and everyone's really willing to teach you and to show you what to do, but you have to be willing to learn and help out at the same time. And that happens all 3 rehearsal schedules for the first 2 weeks until the opening night of the first show, and then night times are devoted to performing. And so you'll only be in a workstation in the morning or in the afternoon. And so if you're not in a show, then you're helping out somewhere else, building the set for that show or building the costumes for that show. And so you never have a dull moment, I guess you could say.
They told me 5 shows in 7 weeks. And my background, as I said, was in community theater, where we basically have 7 weeks to put on one show generally. And I just was shaking my head, how am I going to do this? It usually took me those 7 weeks to even learn my lines. So I was really scared that I wouldn't be as good as everybody else as far as that goes. But you get in it and you work at it all day long, and it happens.
It's hard work, but we all love to do it. So putting up a show in 2 weeks, it makes us all tired, it makes us all cranky, but because it's something we love to do, we get it done.
Well, it was total. Everywhere from scrubbing floors, cleaning the restrooms, to acting on stage, technicians, maybe in one scene being on stage as an actor and off stage working on a crew, prop crew, light crew, whatever it might be. They were all assigned. Everybody did everything.
We worked so hard. We made so many friends. We became acquainted with the community of Huron, which treated us royally that first year.
We kind of live our lives here by the meals. It's like, okay, we have to do this until lunch, we have to do this until dinner, and then, after the show, and it's like every time we eat, we start a new day on those because there's so much time in between, and we're constantly saying, you remember that thing I said yesterday? And it'll have been that morning because the day seems so long sometimes.
So it prepares you professionally, but then later in my life, when I left acting and became involved with producing, I felt like I had a history of the big picture, of how a company works together.
I think the intensity is definitely tiring and ragged, but it also teaches you endurance, how to pace yourself, teaches you your limits, which I think is very, very important.
And I think by the time we left at the end of the season, we knew whether we wanted to continue this as a vocation or whether it was simply going to be an avocation for us.
It taught me what a company really is. It taught me how to create a company of people from diverse backgrounds. And it taught me that there were no stars. And that is what I try to teach, is that everybody is a very valuable piece of every theatrical experience, and that no one person can do it. So I teach it now as a very communal sort of experience. And I learned that at Huron.
Well, being at the Huron Playhouse is just a lot of fun. Everybody always says it's so much more work than anywhere else, and that may be true, but I think the way I feel about it is, you're getting paid to, pretend to be someone on a stage and have fun and goof around.
Welcome to America, dear.
Aren't you going to kiss me?
Yes, Lily.
You're sort of teasing him, right, until he figures it out, and then then enjoy it with him. Okay? Great. Try it again.
I would say auditions are probably the most stressful part of the Playhouse. You come in and you're trying to get to know a bunch of people, and within the first week you're auditioning for the first 3 shows. So you're trying to be friends with someone who may be going for the same part as you. It's tiresome because it's a 4-hour process for each show, and you don't have that much time to get familiar with the part.
Well, when we first get here, we're not precast, so we do have everyone in the company has to audition for all the shows. And the first 3 shows, we audition the first 2 days for. So that's very stressful because the first couple of days of kind of are, I'm looking around, seeing how I stand with everybody else. The audition process is so tiring because you give it everything you can because you want those parts so badly.
Auditions weren't as bad as I thought they were going to be because you already knew that you were in the company. So that took an entire load of strain off of you. Waiting for the cast list was tough. You knew that you had to get up the next day and you were going to be in some sort of rehearsal, so you were happy. Or I was, at least.
I cried the whole day of the auditions for Lend Me a Tenor because I thought I did awful and I thought I'd never get a part. So when the cast list went up, I was just all prepared for disappointment. And then, I got Maggie, which was the part I wanted anyway, and I was so excited. And so I cried some more. But these were tears of joy.
Getting used to the audition process is probably the most important thing you'll ever need in theater because that's what's going to get you the jobs.
I think that some people take it too hard because, like I said earlier, the audition is our job. 50% of what we do is audition. We have to sell ourselves, and it doesn't sound so interesting. It's not so romantic, really, when you think about it, but it's kind of what we're here for.
After the last show was cast, everyone seemed pleased because they really did divvy them out pretty good. I mean, they were fair to everyone, I think, and everyone had a good shot at something. I've been, dealt a pretty good hand both years, so. But I've known people who haven't and have been kind of upset, but they get over it, and that's the thing about theater. If you're going to be in theater and you can't handle rejection, then that's not what you should be doing. Go get a job somewhere else.
Directing here is like giving birth in 3 months rather than 9.
It's crazy because you're working on an insane schedule, but I like it because it speaks to my particular strengths as a director, which is time management, which is motivating people, which is getting people ready to go, getting them confident to get on stage. So here I can do that in fast forward.
You can't close your ears and you can never close your eyes. You can certainly never close your mouth when you're directing. You have to have all your senses have to be on 110% in order to really give a show, a full life and a full shape.
It's more of the big picture. It's the composition of creating images on stage and what I like to call the magic moments where the most dramatic thing's going to happen and how to create that image for the audience and bring that all together.
I'm a director, and I don't think I'm unusual in this, that likes to leisurely explore a play over 6 weeks of rehearsal, to make discoveries, to share these discoveries with actors, to experiment, to try new things, to do all sorts of creative exercises where you don't even deal with the play at all, but you explore your character. Can't do any of that here.
It takes a total awareness, I think, of the theatrical experience in order to be a strong director, because to me, attention to detail is the key.
Here, as a director, you have to be very aware that maybe 1 hour ago, someone you're working with in one kind of role was doing a totally different kind of character, and between that, within that hour, then maybe they have even gone upstairs and they have done something like cooking and getting very hot and very whatever, or they've been selling tickets and it's been frantic and whatever, and so they have to shift their gears.
Because the Playhouse is an academic educational program and summer experience for our students, I think it's important that we give them opportunities that they might not get otherwise, to give people the chance to step into a role that maybe there is somebody here who's got possibly a stronger voice, but this person has got stronger acting skills, and the voice can be brought up to match that. So yes, I think the Playhouse is here to give some young actors opportunities that they might not get if it was a Broadway or an off-Broadway or more professional audition experience.
I really have to hand it to actors, the general company members. I think their work is much more difficult than the work of a director. A director has one show. It is imperative that they come in completely prepared, usually completely blocked, with an idea of scenery, and I mean everything should be, there should be no unanswered questions on their part once the show gets rolling, once rehearsals get rolling. The actors, on the other hand, are usually doing 3 or sometimes 4 different shows simultaneously.
You have to be aware as a director that these people's focus is a lot of different places, and that's one of the wonderful trainings for them, because they have to learn to refocus instantly, almost, on what they're doing at any given time. And it's excellent training, and their concentration level just develops here like crazy. I mean, it takes sometimes students 2 or 3 years to develop the kind of discipline that on a college campus or anywhere that they have to get here to be successful. And as directors, we have to be aware of that.
It's amazing to me that the actors can keep it all in their heads. I mean, if I think it's crazy trying to put it all together for a director, I'm not sure I would want to be, if I could be, you know, an actor here in the summer, because they have to put all of this in their mind and remember the blocking, and for the musical and the music, words, and then we had all the scene changes that were part of Secret Garden that they all had to learn as well.
I enjoyed directing here, especially musicals, because you get to use not only the company people, but community people. And it's, in terms of an educational theater, it's wonderful because you have so many people of different levels of experience that everyone is learning from everybody else.
One thing that's really impressed me always about the Playhouse is the way that the shows are coordinated, that they have such a space backstage to be doing 3 plays at once. And when one is finished, we move it out of the way and literally lift the other one and carry it up here and sit it back down, put it back together, and go on. I've never heard of that happening anywhere else. And obviously they've had 50 years to get it right, but it really is a system to be admired.
I know these days are the most tiring, but it's exciting to walk in and see the bare stage, and then on Sunday it's an operating theater, and then after my show closes the last night, to walk out of here that closing night and it's an empty gymnasium again. And there's something I think that's kind of magical. It's about theater, is where you put it together and then you take it apart and you walk out and no one really knows you've been there.
There's a point at which scenery does its job and it looks good, and I think the audience notices that. And then there's a point at which you're just spending way too much time on stupid details. If you really look closely at the scenery, it's pretty ragged. It has bad edges. Curtains aren't hemmed up right. But from the audience, if they spend a lot of time looking at the scenery, that's really not what the show is about. The show is about actors and lines and theater happening in front of the audience, and it's not. If the audience is looking at the scenery, there's a mistake there somewhere.
We usually have 3 sets being built at one time. We'll take the upstage part back behind the curtains where they're rehearsing or whatever, and we'll split the area into 2. And we'll put 1 set on the left-hand side, 1 set on the right-hand side, and just start like an assembly line putting things together.
It's a scene designer's job basically to decide how the show should look. In other words, the shape of the scenery, the color of the scenery, the texture of the scenery. If the scenery moves, what kind of motion it should have. In other words, should it just roll in or out, or should it be hoisted up on ropes? My job as technical director is to figure out how to build it so that it comes out as they wish it.
And then in the conversation that Norman Myers and I had about what the set should look like for Arsenic and Old Lace, we decided it had to have certain things. I went away and did some planning, did some sketching, did some watercolor, came back, showed him the watercolor of the set, and he looked at it and agreed that that was a very nice set design, but it was backwards. So I didn't really know how to discuss that with him, so I went back and turned the set around, and we built it as the director felt was necessary. And then we played it on that set, and it worked out quite nicely, even though in my mind it was backwards.
In this play, which is a murder mystery, the body is being cut up and put in all these suitcases, and that's how the murderer is going to get everything out of the house so that he will not be found out. And one night, without my knowing it, even though I was in charge of props, somebody had put a bowling ball in the hat box. And as they went to take the hat box out of the house, if you will, this thing started falling apart. And the poor person had to grab it and pull it back under. Well, the audience went up for grabs. I mean, they really thought it was the head they were looking at. So many people screamed. They got letters from people saying that was going a step too far. In 1956, that was far too much. And I remember poor Lee Measley coming back and laying into me saying, "Why did you do that?" And I had to keep saying, "But it wasn't me." But somebody in the company thought it would be fun to put a bowling ball in the hat box.
And one important prop was a banner that has all kinds of very fancy medals on, which Annie has won through her sharpshooting contests in Europe. She's come back to America, and she's gone to a very fancy party. She's wearing a black strapless dress and a black cape, and she, underneath the cape, has this banner with all of these marvelous medals on it. Well, I went to the prop table right before the scene started, and the medals and the banner were not there, but I had to go on anyway. So I put my cape on, I went on stage, and everyone looked at me with great admiration because I was this now famous person, took off the cape, recited the line that was coming up, looking down at the chest without the medals on it. I said the line, which was, "Aren't they magnificent?"
When we were doing the Hasty Heart, and we heard that a man in Milan had a recording of bagpipe music, we went over and asked him if we could borrow it. He was very reluctant to part with it because he had come from Scotland and he had brought this record with him, and this was in the day of the old 78s. And he reluctantly let us borrow it, and we promised him we would take very good care of it. Somebody put it in front of a window where the sun was shining on it, and we had a record like this to take back to him. I have never been so embarrassed in all my life than when we had to go back and give him this warped record that he had treasured so.
One of the things I had to make so far was the champagne bottle for John Loves Mary. It had a label on the front, but it didn't have the foil on top or the label that goes around the top. So Rachel and I both, we cut out the shape of a label, and she's really artistic, so she did a little bit of the lettering inside, and then we painted gold around it and then glued it on, and actually looks really good. Garage sales, every time I see a garage sale in town, I stop, because you never know if you're gonna find that cool little thing pretty cheap at a garage sale. Random garage sale, I think it was actually a block from here, and I was on my way somewhere to like the store or something, saw a garage sale sign, said, okay, well, I'll stop. And I'm heading through, you know, they have glasses and plate, and I find these beautiful wall sconces they were just perfect. Because what you're talking about, getting something like this for free dune. And they're just completely perfect. I love them to death. And it's probably going to be one of my favorite props of the summer just because they were $2 a piece. So I paid $4, got these great wall sconces that were like completely perfect. Prop cabinet, and we have our wonderful heather, which is so important to this show, this, for the wedding bouquet and the Heather on the Hill song. Our swords that our dancers dance with that were pain in the butt to make. And then here's our pretty Bible, the family Bible. And our parchment for the square when they put up the announcements. And
jugs of ale and cups for the wedding feast, and then there's all the bar supplies for the last scene.
The other interesting thing about Huron is that there's so many people that are just dying to help.
When we first came here to Huron, it was amazing to me how we were accepted by the town, by the audiences, by our sponsors. They just seemed to open their arms to us.
A chance to be close to the actor in a rather intimate theater, a chance to see young people performing, a chance to meet with them after the show, backstage, out in the lobby, wherever it might be. There's no barrier at the footlights.
I think that the Playhouse has always attempted to develop a nice balance between what would be entertaining and appealing to the audience, and then maybe bringing some new things, maybe pushing a little bit. You know, Shakespeare 50 years ago maybe would not have been the kind of thing that you might have thought you would be offering to a summer Playhouse audience, but that's what they did.
In this beautiful little lakefront town, there's some professional theater at a very good ticket price, I might add. And for a big chunk, 7 weeks of the summer, or actually 6 weeks in production, each week they can see some of the best shows of a lifetime. I mean, we reach back and pull out some of the best shows to do here and still do some of the current wonderful up-and-coming shows.
Tourism was not as anywhere near as big a business as it is today, and so the Playhouse drew people from the surrounding areas to come here to do something entertaining and to spend some money at restaurants and various other places. And I think that probably was a thing that made it interesting for people to come and was a draw for the community. And I suspect one of the reasons that Huron was so supportive of the Playhouse was it was an attraction at a time when there weren't many attractions.
They could swim or sail or beach all day, have a meal, and then come and see a live performance of a good play. I think my sense is that loyalties were built up so that people were curious in seeing what the new company of the new season was like, what the schedule was like, and it afforded people to have the experience of live theater and to see shows and productions that they may have heard of, in some instances, all their lives.
I recall that a number of the people who would come backstage after our performances were really interested in following us, especially we came back more than one season. They wanted to know what year we were, what our plans were, and many of them kept up with the people even after they left. They wanted to find out what they were doing next. So I think that they bought into and understood why we were there and what we were trying to do. And they saw us not as professionals coming into their area, to the small town of Huron, but instead as students who were really trying to learn their craft and the art of theater. And they respected us in that way.
As a costumer, I had to also help with makeup, and I remember this one girl needed to have her hair dyed. I think she had to have it dyed red. I'm not sure what color it had to be, but anyway, we had to dye it. And she had already bleached hair, so it turned bright green. And we had to send her off to a specialist, and I can't remember, she went through everything to try to get her hair back again.
We didn't do a lot of naked stuff on stage, but there was a scene where Sandy was being painted for her portrait by this older teacher. And because there was a fast scene change after that, there was a naked moment, not observed by the audience, only by that actor who was the painter. And I was draped with this gauzy thing, so actually he shouldn't have been able to see anything anyway. And he was a young man who was very, very serious about his work and paid very little attention to me, I felt. So one night I thought, I'm going to get him. And on my one side, I wrote, "Hi," in magic marker. And on the other side, I wrote, "Hello." and just waited to see if I could raise any eyebrow for him. He either didn't notice at all or he was a very good actor, because I got no response from him at all.
When the students come in that don't really know what they're doing, we tend to give them the job list of sew this button back on, or you know, sew up this little rip here, and it's a little more hand-holding, but they're here to learn, so we teach them. We try to. I was the costume designer for all 5 shows, which basically means make, pull, or rent whatever it takes to get the shows up, and make sure the crews know what they're doing, make sure all the repairs get done every night for the show, make sure there's rehearsal jackets and skirts and shoes for everyone. I was in charge of hair and makeup for all the shows. Didn't necessarily come out and say you're wrong, but you know, and it is the director, it's their show, and it's what they want from their characters. There was a couple instances this summer where I suggested something and they thought, hey, that might work, and that it changed a little bit of the character that they were going with. So it's kind of fun sometimes too. I feel like I've contributed a little more than just some clothes to the show. But and the costumes, it's amazing to watch a couple run-throughs before they have the costumes on, and then to go sit in and watch the first dress. The costumes really help them. I mean, they just, all of a sudden the characters are there, and it's kind of fun to watch that and know that I put those clothes on them.
When we did melodramas, we built some 36-foot-long rollers that rolled the drops up from the bottom to the top. They all had to be hand-rigged, and they were very, very heavy. Some of them were warped a little bit, but we rented old-time drops and used those. Well, I was on the crew to help, as I often did backstage, and most of the time helped on the crews. 2 of us were pulling one of the rollers up, and they were going well. I think we had 7 of them, and we'd alternate back and forth. And by pulling like an upside-down window shade, the roller would go up or come down, sometimes down a little too fast, hit the bottom. But in one instance, we were pulling, and all of a sudden felt like it was tremendously heavy, heavier than it had ever been before. And looking out on the stage, we saw that the villain, in his long cape, had gotten the cape caught in the roller and was starting to be lifted off the floor, rolled up into the roller, much to the delight of the audience, of course. We didn't keep that bit in, but it sure scared him, and we didn't know what was going on. And when he came down with a thump.
Funny thing that I'll never forget. We had 2 wonderful ladies who were subscribers, and I'm sure were for a long time, and they they had seats right in the first row, and they always came to the productions late. And we did J.B. Priestley's drawing room comedy, Dangerous Corner, which starts and ends exactly the same way, except that there's one small line that changes the ending of the play. And these 2 sweet ladies were overheard at the end of the play saying to each other, "Wasn't that nice? They played the beginning over again for those of us who came in late."
Half of the bank of lights went off during his death scene. As the as the scene developed, Bill sort of died by sliding, and he slid over and crawled over and rolled over into the light to die on stage. I love that story.
Well, I was here during the 1969 flood, which was really a tragic experience for many people in this area. But I have memories of downed power lines, 11 tornadoes. I remember that we had just finished painting the first 2 sets, and the priority was to save the school, but also to save those sets. And that meant putting them up as high as we could. The shop was flooded, the stage was flooded. It was really a very dangerous situation, and we just all pitched in.
There was a tremendous amount of flooding. The toilets in the restrooms were geysering about 8 feet into the air, and we were pushing water all night long. And all the next day, there was no power, there was no communication with the outer world. And we, at the time, were really hailed as heroes for having saved McCormick School.
Yeah. What is this place? Oh. Hi. I don't know who to talk to. Hi, we're from Huron Playhouse. Is there any way we can maybe hang a poster on your wall or anything? Great. Is there or by the door? Okay. In the window or? Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Hi. Is there someone who works here or? Yes. Yes? We're from Huron Playhouse. I was just wondering if we could hang a poster in your window. We're from Huron Playhouse. We were just wondering if we could hang a poster in your window. Great. Is there any particular place or anywhere? This window? Okay, great. Thank you.
We have publicity shots. They have to be taken a week previous so that they can get into the paper. So the costumer throws together whatever costume she can so it looks appropriate. And then we use this place a lot because it happens to fit for a lot of the shows that we do here. Captain Montague's, it's a bed and breakfast here in town. And they got great gardens for Secret Garden, okay? And they've got some Victorian-looking kind of furnishings inside, so they get printed up. Our photographer, Greg Mays, he gives the director some shots. She picks the shots, and they get sent out by our business office to all different papers that we advertise in.
How many meals have you served this summer?
Well, 2 full meals a day for about 50 days. So about 100 meals for 50 people a meal. Because I've had to ask for some vegetarian items that the stores have been a little unfamiliar with. When I first asked for tofu, it took 3 people in the store to finally figure out what tofu was. And so when we did finally find the tofu in the store, they tried to ring it up, and initially it came up at $2,329 for one thing of tofu. And rather than realizing it was an error, the checkout lady simply said, "Boy, this stuff is worth gold." And then I explained to her that I thought that the price was probably wrong.
One of the funniest terms in theater is called strike. Theater is the only place where strike is work. Because it doesn't mean work stoppage, it means taking apart one set and here putting another one in as fast as you can.
Hey, Brian.
John, they won't get hurt.
Sean, what's up, man? Everybody else in this group, do your thing. Hey, Brian. 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 Hey, Brian.
Everybody.
It's really a very simple logistical problem.
Well, I think it's unique in its status, unique in its setup, in that they bring in students and give them an opportunity. They're not just hiring somebody to come in and perform a play.
A lot of these kids were really dedicated to this thing, and they worked hard.
Obviously, over the years, it's had good directors, good producers, and good actors. Without those people being consistently good, it wouldn't have happened. It could not have continued.
I think the audiences found our energy attractive. Here were these variously talented kids who were just giving their all.
And I think it's an extremely important public affairs, public relations contact for the university.
I think it's a good experience. It's a good learning experience for people in all phases of theater, and also on making friends with townspeople that are strangers to you, and turning the program into a graduate program also, and getting people from other schools, bringing their ideas and finding out how they did things and getting along with them.
The arts will always be a struggle to have support. I think that's, unfortunately, just one of the ways that our society, at least at this time, is. But if we don't fight the good fight, then no one is going to. And I think in this area, the Playhouse is a standard bearer for excellence in the arts. And we can be very proud of that, and the community should be very proud of that. The university should be very proud of that. And I certainly am.
I don't know that anything has affected me as profoundly as my experience here did, and has it affected my career and my life.
The self-reliance that you develop, whether or not you had it when you first came, because you're by yourself and you're working very closely with other actors. You form a team.
Yeah.
This is your family.
But the theater gave me that opportunity to see a little different aspect of life and participate in it, and perhaps even do something meaningful with my life. And I thank the theater for that.
Because I've continued on professionally in show business, I think it just prepared me for a sense of hard work, a sense of people, a sense of teamwork, definitely, and team spirit and commitment.
Well, I think it really prepares you to get along well in theater, to get along with others in the theater. I think that's like something you've got to learn if you're going to work professionally early on. If you don't know how to do that, you won't last in the business.
For the last 40-some years, I have been involved in theater, and I think it taught me that my place in the theater was behind the curtain and not with the curtain open.
When I got into publishing, and I landed with a large publishing company and stayed with them for 37 years. And the experience that I had at Huron Playhouse and learning to do by doing kept me in good stead every day of that job. One of the biggest things I learned at Huron was to plan, to take a calendar and say, the performances are going to be here, 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 and here. Working backward from that, what do we do?
The first 2 years of the Playhouse is probably one of the major accomplishments of my life.
It was a very enriching experience, but a very difficult one. And I have been glad all of my life that I had that summer here.
I never had a collection of people in my life like that again, and I expected it every place else I went. This was the place that measured all the other places for
Wow, I knew the Playhouse had a lot to celebrate, but I never realized just how much. And it's meant so much to so many.
I loved the Huron Playhouse. I still do, because the emphasis is and was on joy, not show business. That is something that is very hard to find these days.
You're so right, Ron. The Huron Playhouse is a very special community, and it has a fine story to tell.
And there's no end in sight. The story continues every summer along these shores.
Unfortunately, our time here has ended. Thank you for sharing in this celebration of the Huron Playhouse. Your support has been and will continue to be greatly appreciated.
Well, you're quite welcome, Lynn.
Actually, Ron, I was speaking to the viewing audience.
Oh, sorry. Well, so long then.
Goodbye.
Lynn?
Yes, Ron?
Don't forget the lights!
Oh.
Boy.
Theater is a collaborative effort, and nobody can do the Playhouse all by themselves. It's just not possible. It takes a lot of teamwork, and sometimes that team has to be beaten.